Okay, here we go. Hello, people in TV land. Yeah, because people are still asking me, will be asking me in December, Dr. Dunn, what's the date for the paper? And remember, Dr. Dunn has spent like weeks working on this syllabus, so you know that's why I get a little bit agitated. But luckily, I have coffee, so that my coffee keeps me calm. Well, mostly coffee. No, no, it's just coffee. It's just coffee. Don't worry. Dr. Dunn's not coming to class high. All right. Anyways, the syllabus. So yeah, I'm going to go over the bare bones of the syllabus, what I think are the most important things. And the most important thing, number one, is read the syllabus. Yes, I know it's 50 pages long. 20 years ago when I started out, my syllabi were like 2 pages, very sketchy. But, with legalities and that it's got to treat it like a contract and, people don't feel like they've been treated justly, which is appropriate. I understand. You want to know the standards that you're going to be judged by and you want them spelled out. Yes. I mean, if you ever need to appeal a grade or you think I've done something wrong, or whatever, you just need to think you need to know the dates for when things are due. Okay. It has to be more extensive than professors did when I was a student and when I was even starting out. So, I get that. So that's just the nature of the beast. I apologize that it's so long, but, read, skim read the thing, but make sure, pick out the sections that are most appropriate and most important. Obviously, the requirements for the course, read that closely. Class attendance, read that closely. Title IX, you maybe don't need to know that if you're a male, but if you are a female, then yeah, okay, then you might want to know about that, or other little tidbits, like when's the ad drop period end, wink, wink. When you have to withdraw, so stuff like dates like that. The schedule for the class, the readings and stuff. Definitely read that. And what I did when I was a student, you don't have to do this, but I'm just throwing it out there, is when I highlighted it all and just made a short crib list for myself of all the dates and things, so I didn't have to go back and go shuffle or, going through the syllabus all over again. And I can put it on my calendar. It's done. I know when things are due and when they're going to happen. Because, and this is why this is the number one thing I want to tell you, if you come up to me with a question, with something that is specifically addressed on the syllabus, what do you think I'm going to say to you? Yeah, read the syllabus. Probably the first thing before that is I'm going to say, well, what does the syllabus say? Because that usually gets people, because they haven't read the syllabus a lot of times and they don't know. Okay, so they stammer. All right, read the syllabus. Why? I'm not just going to tell you. I put a lot of work into the syllabus. The information is there in great detail in some cases. You should know it. Right? So don't rely on me to tell you just because you didn't want to go open the syllabus and find it first. And if it's not there, then certainly come and ask me. Or if my instructions are confusing or not clear, then come and ask me. Okay, that's fine. But don't come and ask me like, when's the paper due? When do the quizzes go up on Canvas and stuff like that? Anyways, okay, so the basic info for the course. I've told you what the course is. Presumably you know when we're meeting today and Thursday at 11. You know the room number. My name is Matthew Dunn. Hopefully you know that by now from if you looked on Canvas and you got my emails. The course description, just to read the course description and the syllabus, which I did not write. I'm just taking it pretty much verbatim from the catalog. This course examines the features of religious faith that are common to Protestant and Catholic Christianity, basic Christian beliefs, okay, characteristics of adult faith development. I have no idea what that means, just so you know. I guess helping you grow in your faith, if I have to think about it. Commitment to one's Christian faith in a contemporary world. Does that mean I'm trying to convert you? Or I don't know. Anyways, okay, commitment to your Christian faith are treated in an ecumenically sensitive manner. Well, no, we'll learn later what the word ecumenical means at its root. It just means universal, but it has come to mean a more specific term in the case of religious relationships between the different Christian denominations. So, when Catholic scholars and say Methodist scholars sit down for a confab, it's ecumenical dialogue, they call it. They're talking about the issues that they agree on, but also issues that maybe still divide them, and maybe see if there's any way to bridge those issues. Sometimes there isn't, but sometimes you can come to agreement on issues you thought you disagreed on. So that's ecumenical dialogue. That's how they're using it here, I imagine. However, as I say in the syllabus, Gwynedd identifies itself as a Catholic university. Protestantism is huge. Catholicism's huge. It comprises not just the Western Church, which if you're a Catholic in this room, you're probably a part of the Latin Church, the Roman Church, but I'm not. I mean, I grew up in the Roman Church, but I transferred to the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, which is Byzantine. So you have millions of Byzantine Catholics who are in communion with the Pope of Rome. Syriac Catholics, you have Coptic Catholics in Egypt, Ethiopian Catholics, and they're not part of the Roman Church per se. Their masses are very different. Their traditions and history are very different, but they're all united in the communion of faith and in authority with the Pope. Okay, they accept the ultimate authority of the Pope. So it's even just Catholicism is diverse. Okay, Protestantism even more so. On one end of the spectrum, you got Southern Baptists. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, okay, who are technically not Protestant, wouldn't identify themselves as Protestant, but they kind of get lumped in that direction. They lean more Protestant in their vision of Christianity than Catholicism. So I can't cover all of that. My main focus is going to be Catholicism, but I will often, throughout the course, tip my hat and talk about other issues that might come up that might be related to, say, Protestant concerns and stuff like that, when they're relevant. But there's, Catholics and Protestants all accept Jesus, right? So there's not going to be much, but the Protestant Jesus is like this and the Catholic Jesus is like that, Anyways, so that's what I'm going to be doing with that. So just fair warning, basic info, the description. I said that, read the syllabus. Okay, the books. Books. They are on the bookstore, in the bookstore. So hopefully you've gotten them or have looked for them, rented them, bought them, whatever. But these are the two books for the course. Only two. Keep it simple, the Bible and the Catechism. The Bible, obviously, because it's, the official sacred text of the Catholic Church and Christianity in general, for the most part. Some other groups would throw in some other things, but the Catholic Bible. And the Catechism. Catechism, the Greek word for catechism simply means, or Greek word catechism simply means instruction. Instruction, very simple. But it's come to take on a religious meaning. A catechism, it usually means instruction in religious faith. So, in any religious faith. So you take a catechism class, at Sunday school, or you might go to a mosque and take catechism, learn your faith, or, go to a synagogue and stuff like that, yeshiva, something like that, and learn catechism. You're still learning catechism. It's instruction in a religious faith. And that's what the catechism is. I'll come back to that in a second, or this in a second. First, the Bible. Yes. First question a lot of people ask is, do I have to get this kind of Bible, the New American Bible Revised Edition? Because some of you might have a Bible. Not the Catholics. I know that. Don't worry about it. Well, that's not true. In Catholic households, they usually have a Bible that's, keeping up a creaky chair or something. It's paperweight. Anyways. But yes, it would be, if you have your King James Version or your New International Version, which are Protestant translations, that's fine. But some of the books you're going to have to, go on the internet for, because the Catholic Bible has additional books, and I give some readings from those. So to do those readings, you will have to search them out. But also Catholic Bibles are helpful because they've got all sorts of notes at the bottom of the page and cross references and stuff like that, which usually Protestant Bibles do not have. They just have the text, and maybe at the bottom they'll have some variations in the manuscript tradition that are major that they want you to know about. Here you get all sorts of information with the text as well. So that's more helpful, I think. Okay, this is not, has anyone gotten the Bible yet from the bookstore? Anybody? No? Don't raise the bar, people. Huh? It's not open right now? But can't you order it online?
Yeah.
Oh, so you can order your textbook, but classes have started, so you can't get any of your textbooks? I'm sorry. Yeah, if you have a Bible, it's perfectly all right, miss. No, you're fine. You're fine. That's perfect. That's a good question. Yes, you can bring your Bible that you have at home, whatever translation it is. So if you have a Bible, you don't need to, but you will just need to at least go online and find, like, if I ask for a reading from the Book of Wisdom or Sirach or Tobit or something, you're gonna have to go online and find that if you don't want to buy a whole new Bible. But this is it. Yeah, I don't know what size. I tried to get something this is my size, a personal size edition. Apparently they're not publishing it anymore. Catholic Book Publishing has their own translation that they're pushing, so the NAB they're pushing off to the side. But we have, so you have the Bible on there. The Catechism, this is not exactly the same as on the bookstore, but anyways, it's the most recent edition. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, issued in the 90s by Pope St. John Paul II, and basically it's an instruction manual, just a summary of Catholic faith on every topic available related to the faith that you could imagine. It's pretty comprehensive. Yeah, I've read it. I forced myself to read it one summer. No, I've read it. I should say I forced it. But this is what I usually did. It's the second edition. That's what you want, definitely. But what you'll see on the bookstore is the second edition with the addition of paragraphs such and such by Pope Francis, blah, blah, blah. Because Pope Francis changed like one paragraph. So they had like republished the whole thing. All I did was, what did I do? I printed out the paragraph. Where is it? I just had it. There it is. Paragraph 2267 about the death penalty. I didn't have to reprint a whole new edition, but they have, so I want to give you the most up-to-date. Okay? How to use these books is really simple. Just like any book. The Bible is a book like any other book. If you don't know where something is, you look in the table of contents, yes? So at the front of every Bible, there should be a nice table of contents. Here we go. Old Testament, New Testament. You look for the book that you want. Okay? The readings from the book of Exodus at page 65. So you turn to page 65 and you find it. Okay? Everything's divided up into chapters and verses. It's the Middle Ages. And it took 1,500 years to figure that one out. So if I say it's the book of Exodus, chapter 5, then you just go from chapter 1, turn the page, chapter 2, to get to the one that says chapter 5. And then there are little verse numbers. Okay, so the particular line of scripture, a sentence, or maybe a couple of sentences. Okay, and I say it's chapter 5, and I want you to read, say, verses 10 to 20, or whatever. So you skip over all the other little, 1, 2, 3, 4, you count down to 10. Yeah, simple, right? You read 20, and that's it, you're done. Right? That's just how you find it. It's no big mystery. Okay. The Catechism is, in a way, even simpler because every section is numbered from the beginning of the Catechism. So, number 1, the very first section. Actually, that little thing in the prologue here, they probably should have numbered that. But anyways, every section from the first section until the last, how many may they have? Like, I know they have 2,000 something. You see here. It's the last one. 2,865. Okay. So you don't go by page numbers. Remember this, because in the schedule for the course, I don't give you page numbers. Okay, for the Bible, I'm going to give you chapter and verse. I'm not going to give you the pages of your Bible because they're all different. They're printed differently. And the catechism as well. I don't know what version of the catechism you have. So you don't have to go by page numbers. You go by the section number. So if I say read 100 to 150, doesn't mean you read 50 pages from the catechism. You're not going to read page 100 to page 150. You're just going to read sections 1 to 150. Most of which are pretty short. I mean, if you look at them, each section is not much. Some of them are longish, but for the most part, they're really like that. They're not very long. So don't kill yourself, please. Don't do more work than you have to, or than I'm asking you to, really. Okay. So the books. I went over the books, the requirements for the course. If you're looking at the syllabus, I believe it's on page 4. There's a final exam, which is 40% of your grade. So that's a large chunk of your grade. The final exam, which is cumulative. It will cover everything covered in the course. Okay? So take notes and pay attention. And there will be 4 quizzes. I gave 5 in the past. I just had 4 this time. Got lazy. You guys should throw an extra one in there. What do you think? No. Okay, Mr. Muzzle. We'll stick to 4 quizzes, which total will add up to 25% of your grade. And really, when you're taking the quizzes, you're taking the final exam. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I mean, I've got hundreds and hundreds of questions, so no quiz will be alike, okay? The number of questions will be alike. You'll get basically 50 questions. I doubt you'll get less than that. I'll probably be 50 every time. But I've got hundreds of questions for each, so it works out that as the Canvas shuffles the questions and selects the questions randomly, that no one's going to get the exact same quiz. Nevertheless, so there might be questions that you'd never see on your quizzes that then do show up on the final exam. I can't tell what Canvas is going to choose, which questions you're going to get, and what someone else might get. So pay attention. So the 4 quizzes. And in the syllabus, I give you the dates. There's 4 dates, and basically they're put out on Fridays. They're all Fridays. Keep it regular. On these certain Fridays by 6 p.m., I will make the quiz available, and you'll have basically a week to do it, to get it done. Okay? You do it on Canvas. Yes, you can use your notes. That's fine. I think your notes should be useful to you, not just something that you're going to throw in the Thresher later, which maybe you will, but at least you can use them now for your quizzes. So yeah, use your notes and take the quiz, and you have a week. What if you don't get it done? What if there are issues? It's in the syllabus. Okay, try to get it done. Don't waste your time. I know a lot of people wait until the next Friday rather than getting it done early, but you never know what can happen. You never know what can happen to your computer or to you, and if you don't, if it's going to be late, then it'll be marked late. Okay, so read the syllabus. There are certain penalties for that if your work is late. So 4 quizzes, 1 paper, 20%, not too long, 800 words minimum, which is roughly 2 pages, single-spaced. Okay, at least it's not too long for me, but I still have to read it. I know you have to write it, but I also have to read it. But that's the minimum. If you want to write more, that's fine. But I want a minimum because I don't want to get like one little paragraph from somebody, and say, well, I did it, Okay, you can still submit that, but you're going to get a really poor grade if you submit below the minimum, because that's the minimum I'm expecting from you. Okay, it's 800 words. And I give you, in the syllabus, I give you instructions on how I want it to look. Very simple, just what you would expect. Tell me who you are so I know whose work it is, what class it's for so I know which class it's for, and what it is. Is it paper 1? Because there's only 1 paper here. But if I had like 3 papers, which one is it? You said, is this now paper 2, paper 3? What are you doing? Paper 1? Yeah, I could assume, sure, but I don't want to assume. I want to just know, all right? So look at that, because if you don't follow those guidelines, which are spelled out again in the syllabus, then that will affect your grade on the paper. The paper is, one thing I will mention about the paper that is very important is there are requirements on sources. I have several books on the reserve shelf in the library. Reserve shelf means that you go, you ask for the book, they give you the book, you use it in the library, and then you return it when you're done. I don't know what process they have if they take your ID card and hold on to. Do they do? Okay. Maybe, yeah, they hold on to something to make sure you bring it back and stuff. It does not go out of the library. You're not checking it out for yourself because it's on reserve. It's reserved for the people in the course so that everyone can have hopefully some access to it. And I want you to use 3 of those texts. 3 of them. Cite them 3 times, at least 3 times, 3 different texts. So you can have at least 3 citations from 3 different books. So you at least looked at 3 different books. No, I won't mention that. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Okay, so be aware of that. Okay. So don't ask me, oh, if you find something else, if you want to have additional stuff, like, you want to get a better grade maybe or something like that, and you want to consult other things, that's fine. But you better make sure at least you have 3 of those books, different books, cited in your paper that show me that you've used them, quote from them, summarize an argument, a specific argument by the author. Of course, you give me the page number so I can check it out. And I'm OCD, so I usually do. Oftentimes, that's why it takes me so long to grade. And hopefully your quote or whatever is relevant to your argument. It's not just something you cherry picked and said, well, I quoted it and has nothing to do with what I'm saying, but boom, I fulfilled the requirement. All right. Okay, what's the next thing? Mention that the requirements. Oh, the last requirement, class participation. It's graded, just to keep people involved in the course, to show me that you're thinking, to get you off of maybe the gaming sites and the gambling sites for at least a few seconds. A few seconds. Yes, Ms. Wanamaker. Yes. See, it's sticking, Ms. Wanamaker, right? Right? It's getting there. It's getting there. Little by little. So yeah, so I talk to people, I call on people. During class, I ask people to do readings or read from the PowerPoint, all voluntary. I'm not going to force you. And I appreciate when you do. So I make a little check for that class to know that you participated. And yeah, it will affect your grade in the course. If you just sat here, well, they probably get a passing participation grade, but a low one. But if you want to get an excellent one or an outstanding one, then, you can ask, you can ask questions and show me that you're involved or become involved by doing a reading or something. Yeah, so read the syllabus about that, what that constitutes. What do I want to say? There's something else I wanted to say about class. Oh, yeah. Some people are uncomfortable with that. I understand that. Tell me, because some people are just quiet by nature, and that's fine, or shy or introverted, or just don't want to be bothered, that's fine, okay? You don't want me to bother you, but okay, but I can't say that's going to raise your class participation grade. I'm not trying to be mean. I just want people to know, because sometimes people have mentioned this. I'm not calling people out when I ask you something. It's not like, oh, I think he's not paying attention. You, sir, Tedeschi? Oh, all right. Mr. Tedeschi. No, I'm not like jumping on you like a sumo wrestler to like find. I want to know. I'm asking you a question. I want to give you the opportunity to do a reading or something, even so that I can give you that little check and it helps your grade. You understand? I'm not doing it to. I just want to make it clear, because I think some people kind of got scared of me, and we're like, it's kind of like I'm coming after you. No, I'm not trying to come after you. I'm trying to encourage you. Okay. But if you don't want me to, well, you can just say, Dr. Dunn, I don't want to do anything. And I might still give you a check for, for class participation just for telling me that, But if, it's really an issue, please tell me so, I can make a note in my mind or somewhere that, don't, this person needs peace and quiet and just, needs to just concentrate. Okay, that's fine. And I'll try to do that. I mentioned that, paper, the reserve shelf, and class attendance. All right. And the schedule is here, so just to give you a little idea, introducing the course. Okay, I've done that. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Jesus in an introductory fashion. The reading is the syllabus, which you have. So hopefully, if you haven't read it, you will. And for the next course coming up on Thursday, read paragraphs, sections 50 to 73 in the Catechism. All right. Any questions? Anything unclear that you want to know? No, hold on a second. Walker? No. Hold on a second. It's there. No, that's Nolina. Okay. No. Is Lacey? No, that's not right. Oh, I thought I was in the right place. What's your first letter of your last name? F? Farley? Okay, good. Farley. All right. Oh, you're all the way up there. I thought you were at the bottom. Sorry. Okay. Yes, Miss Farley.
It's 5 students at 5.
Oh, yes. That's a good question. Each question is 1 point. So whatever type of question it is, matching, multiple choice, short answer, essay, which I'm never going to do an essay. Don't worry about that. But whatever question, they're all 1 point. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. So some questions, if I have a matching question, that's like you're doing 4 or 5 questions or 3 at once. Oh, yes. Doctor. Yes. Okay. Where am I? Where are my notes? Take them out yet. All righty. Here. Had it up there. And it just, did it minimize on its own? Thought I had it open. Oh, it's weird. Who's this? Oh, okay, that's that. All righty. I should warn you, of course, that maybe I'll play this the next class, but I should warn you, of course, that you will be hearing a lot of Christian heavy metal from the 80s, mostly the 80s. Yes. Because I like it, and because I try to tie it into what I'm going to be teaching in the course during the day. Whoops. That's why it triggered. I hate you Windows. Then again, they stop touching the keyboard. So let's talk about Christianity in a very basic way. Christianity. I got this, how many Christians are there in the world? You can see there on the PowerPoint. I got it from this book. There's sociologists, Todd Johnson and Brian Grimm. And they put out this book of statistics called The World's Religions and Figures. Meaning numbers. Which is fine. So it gives us at least some idea. It's really hard to find. It's hard to find numbers on specific religions. But anyway, so as of 2010, these their figures. So yeah, that's 15 years ago, going on 16 years ago. There were 2.26 billion Christians on the planet. Okay, 2.6 billion. Where am I? Who follow Jesus of Nazareth? That's what this course is about. Christian faith. What's it about? They're Christians because they follow a man that they believe is the Christ or the Messiah of the Jews, a king warrior figure. Talk more about what the Messiah is later on in other classes. But called the Christ, and that Jesus was it, this man Jesus from a town called Nazareth. So the whole course is about him and about, losing you already. That was quick. It's all about him, Jesus. So when I told Mr. Risley that I'd be talking about Jesus for 3.5 months, I'm not really lying. It's all about Jesus. Jesus Christ, or Jesus of Nazareth, was a 1st century AD Palestinian Jew. And should I talk about that now, or should I talk about it later? Do another class. So 2,000 years ago, our calendar is based on his life, on when people thought or one person, I should say, thought that he was born. Sometime in the 500s. Is His name was Denis Exiguus or Dionysius Exiguus. This doesn't seem like the whiteboard to me. This is wall, right? Can you write on this?
Yeah.
Looks like whiteboard.
All right. Denis the Short, as he's traditionally been called, Dionysius or Exiguus. Dionysius is the Latin or Greek form of Denis. All right, Denis the Short. But, really the word exiguous in Latin, Dionysius Exiguus or Denis Exiguus, however, whichever form you see it, if you search on Google, exiguous doesn't really mean short. It more has the sense of being humble or lower in stature. So someone, I guess, took it, exiguous literally as being lower, really lower in stature, like he was a short man. But in point of fact, it probably just means that he was a very humble man who lowered himself. Okay, he was lower than others. Or it also could indicate, his birth, that he was born into the lower classes or something. It doesn't technically mean short, but that's the traditional name, Denis the Short. Anyways, he was a monk from modern-day Romania, around that region. I think Romania can claim him. And he lived in the 500s AD. And he wanted to determine how long it had been, 500. He wanted to determine how long it had been since the birth of Christ. Okay, because, the calendar was not based on Jesus at all at that time. It was based on, like the reigns of emperors and rulers and stuff like that, or when the Olympic Games were held. So, major events that you could date something from. The foundation of the city of Rome, stuff like that. No one was dating by Jesus' birth or by Jesus' birth at all, not even Christians at this time, but he wanted to, from the date of Jesus' birth. Right? He wanted to date things from that time period. And so he went through the records, looked at the reigns, figured it all out, and he came up, well, I think this period of time, which I'll call 1 AD, was the date when Jesus was born, his nativity, his birth. Okay, so that's when he comes. There's no 0 because 0 is nothing. He's here, so 1 AD, all right? There's no BC yet. He didn't come up with BC. That comes later, but he came up with AD. And what does AD mean? Ms. Don't tell me. What's the first letter of your last name is?
H.
H? Not Hinkle, I know that. I know who you are, Mr. Hinkle. Oh, Miss Hoy.
Or is it after death? After death.
After death. So the first year after Jesus' death? Whose death? Jesus' death or? Well, whose death? The death of whom? Okay, Jesus is fine. Anybody else want to suggest?
Is it called?
Huh?
What?
I'm just saying, after whose death? After whose death? Mr. Hinkle.
I know it doesn't stand for after death, some sort of or I don't know exactly what it is.
Interesting.
It doesn't stand for after death.
Why not?
Because 180 is approximately just points, and 180 is approximately that.
Yes, sir, the one were born long time.
So we have 9 years. Not yet. On the road, but not by there.
I'm telling you, sir, you're smart for me. You're gonna make me look bad. Anyways, that makes sense to me. It's because if it's Jesus, when Jesus is born, that's not death. But even if, how could it be the first year of Jesus after he died? He's dead, That's not going to be the first year of Jesus. Or unless maybe Dennis meant the first year after Jesus' death. Yeah, maybe he could have meant that. But then, what about the period before when Jesus was alive? 30-some years. How do we date that then? Well, if he wants to date it from the time when Jesus came, why doesn't he? So yeah, it's probably not that. Also because As I said, he was, in medieval Romania and probably didn't speak modern English. And after death is no modern English. So probably doesn't mean that. Roman, yes, you're on the right track, sir, Mr. Hinkle, yes. It's an abbreviation from, well, not necessarily Roman, but that has another meaning. Oh, what? Not English language, but what language do the Romans commonly speak? Yes, Mr. Disk. Latin. Latin! Yes, Latin. Our old friend Latin. Well, my old. They don't teach it in school, but anyone go to a Catholic school? Did they have Latin? Huh? No, they did not teach Latin. Oh, they did teach Latin. Oh, they did not teach Latin. Ah. Yeah. That's probably the only place nowadays you might actually get Latin courses. Oh, my community college, I took Latin. Yeah, I mean, you need that if you're going to study medieval history and stuff like that. You certainly need it for the church, because all the church documents up until like the 1960s are in Latin. So you have to have, even if your Latin's very bad like mine, you have some familiarity with it. So, I'm not as smart as I appear because I know Latin. Anyway, or know that this is Latin. Oh, you're back. AD, Anno Domini. It is a Latin expression, not for after death. But, Miss Hoy, you are on the right track with BC. We'll get to in a moment. Anno Domini, which is a Latin expression. Those of you who speak a Latin language like Spanish, French, or Portuguese, Romanian, maybe Italian. Okay, you're already familiar with these words. You can tell it means year. Exactly the same in Italian, anno, an in French, and año in Spanish and Portuguese. And domini, this is a little bit harder. This means lord or master. The only example I can really, when you say, I'm going to dominate you, or you dominate something, you're lording over the person. So that's where we use it, I guess, in English. The only other time you really come across it like in mafia films, where the Don, who's the head of the mafia family, Don Corleone, hey, Don Corleone. Well, Don comes from, it's a shortened version of Dominus, Lord or Master. But this is, Latin changes, in some languages, the words change their form based on their relationships. We don't do this very much in English. We used to in Old English, but we don't do that very much. The only remnants of that we have are like in the possessive, the girl's book, the boy's book, the S sound to show the possessive. And in our pronouns, he, him, his, something like that. So things change. It's not just he, okay? And Latin is very much inflected, and so literally this means it's annus. Annus is the noun case or the nominative case, but it changes to anno when you use it in the ablative. Yes, the ablative fans. The ablative. I killed him with a sword. Cum laude. Anyways, in the year, anno, in the year, domini, this is the possessive, this is a version of the possessive. Dominus becomes, and us becomes an e, so it's domini, so in the year of the Lord Jesus, okay? 1 AD, okay? So this year that we've counted, we've now gone through 2,025 years since when Dennis thought Jesus was born. He was wrong, Mr. Guzman. He was off by a few years. He was close, given the fact that he didn't, have like Copilot or something. Couldn't just, they had to work with all these manuscripts and competing dates, and manuscripts could be wrong or contradictory. Came close, but actually, as we'll find out when we talk about Jesus in a later class, Jesus was born before he was born, actually. But this is the standard we go with on the Western calendar. It's dated by the birth of Jesus. Many of your textbooks you'll see here at the university and many universities, some people are uncomfortable wanting to date by the date of a religious figure. For some people, Jesus is not Lord at all. They don't believe he's God or that he's Christ or he's the master. So they don't want to say AD Anno Domini because he's not their Lord. So they substitute CE, which means what? Not you, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Hinkle.
Common era.
The Common Era. And Mr. Hinkle, sir, what is the Common Era?
Modern times.
Okay, modern times, be more specific. When do you think modern times began?
Approximately around the Roman Empire. Like when they're starting to reach their peak.
Their peak? Well,
Not that they're exactly, but when they're approaching it.
you have to remember the Roman Empire extended over a long period of time, 200 years. And their peak was probably just before the time of Jesus. And then the rest of it was kind of, they were in stasis and then decline. Okay. Modern era, the Roman Empire. So over 2,000 years ago, that's modernity?
By certain standards, yeah, it's pretty modern.
They had no steam engines. They had no laptops.
It's pretty modern. If you want, you can change it. That would be current, modern.
It's good. When do historians usually think of modern period? And we take any majoring in history or taking history? No, I know you all want to do health science and stuff like that. Rough bomb on stick the needle. Yes, sir.
Yes, Roman, or no, Renaissance.
Ooh, when was that? Well, that's a good answer. Yeah, well, there are different renaissances. There's the Renaissance began in Italy, northern Italy, around the 1400s, or maybe I might be the 1300s. Someone look that up for me. I'll give you an extra credit for it. It began as early as the 1300s. 1400 sticks in my mind. Northern Italy, the Italian Renaissance, and then that spread throughout the rest of Europe. This rebirth of knowledge. Basically, there was a rediscovery of ancient classic writings from the Romans and the Greeks and stuff like that. Things that the Westerners did not necessarily have anymore in the originals. But they did. They only had them in Latin translations, not very many of them. You can thank the Arabs for that. The Arabs were like translating from the Greeks and for centuries and centuries, and then it kind of percolated over into the West. And they rediscovered materials that had been lost. So the rebirth, the Renaissance, or the Renaissance. Yeah, the 1400s. The modern period is usually dated to around the time of the Protestant Reformation, 1500s. Yeah, as a true turning point where we reach modernity and the principles of modernity, like free thought, basing things on your own thought and reason, stuff like that, not being under the modern science, empiricism, studying things through experience and not just relying solely on traditional views, what you've been told was the case. Those start to emerge from the ground, okay? So thank you, Mr. What's the first letter of your last name, sir?
G.
G? Gaffney?
Yes.
Okay. Like the comedian Gaffney, right? Okay. That's how I'm gonna remember you, sir. Sorry. No, I shouldn't say that. You show people how you make the sausage. No? Anyway, so we have this. So people don't want to. So no. I mean, Common Era does not really refer to modernity because it goes all the way back to Jesus. I mean, it's just 1 CE, and now it's 2025 CE. So nothing's really changed. Sometimes people will interpret this as the Christian era. Okay, but Christianity was in one part of the world, for a long, long time. Stuff was going on in India and China, Australia, North and South America, long before Christianity was there. So, tell them they were under the Christian era, There is no common era. Historians don't use this, but it's to be sensitive to those people who might not want to say it's the year of the Lord. That they don't say Jesus. I might say BC is before Christ. Time BC. So we have 1 BC, the year before 1 AD, later was called the time before Christ. Dennis didn't give us this. He just dated it from Anno Domini. But later on, I forget who came up with that. I think it was actually Jewish scholars, the 1800s, if I remember, but don't quote me on that, who decided that the common thing was to oh no, wait, that's wrong. CE, they're the ones who came up with CE and BC. Jewish, they have merged with Jewish scholars in the 1800s, having these substitutes for AD and BC. Because, AD, Jesus is not the Lord. If you're a Jew, you don't worship him, you don't honor him, you don't believe in him. But also, he's not Christ. So to say that, okay, well, this is the first year before Christ, or this is 500 BC before Christ, okay, if you use it as a name for Jesus, okay, I guess that's fine, but it's really not a name. Christ is a title, Messiah. And for a Jew, he's not the Messiah. So you don't want to say before Christ either. So they say BCE, before the Common Era, or whatever. All right, so just so you know, you recognize these things. I will be using AD and BC because I'm a believer. If it does offend you, then if it really is an issue for you, then tell me. Because, I used to avoid BCE and CE in the past, but as I started to think about it, I'm like, yeah, okay, I accept it. We know it's all dated from the time of Jesus. The dates haven't changed. The Western calendar is dated from a particular religious figure, just the way it is. Okay, if we were living in Saudi Arabia or Iran or in a Muslim country, Malaysia, Indonesia, they don't date their calendar from the life of Jesus. They date it from events in the life of the person they believe in, the Prophet Muhammad. It's Revelation. Okay, so they date it from an event in his life. So it's a totally different year. If you travel to Malaysia, you get a newspaper or something, receipt from the Starbucks. It's going to have a different date. It's not going to say 2025. It's going to say something like 14 something. I forget what year it is actually. I'd have to look it up, get it on the agenda. And then you go into a Jewish synagogue, especially like an Orthodox synagogue or a conservative synagogue, they date it from the year they believe the world was made by God in the book of Genesis. So their year is like 5,000 something. It's only, by their estimation, 5,000 years. So they don't use the Western calendar at all in the religious setting. Yeah? Outside, of course, it's 2025. Okay, so Jesus lived 2,000 years ago. First century Palestinian Jew from the area of Palestine. Palestina, the province, or the area as it was called by the Romans who were under the control of it at the time. He was a craftsman, a woodworker, and he was a religious teacher. Along the line, he changed careers. I guess the woodworking didn't work out. He made one too many bad plows for somebody, and they're like, Jesus, have you ever thought about being a rabbi? It's like what in the Middle Ages, what the families used to do with the useless kid. The kid who's not going to do anything in life. Go, give him to the church. Let him be a priest. I'm not lying. Anyways, but he was a craftsman, a religious teacher. And he claimed, or he was claimed by his followers, whether he made that claim is another question we'll talk about later, to be this long expected king savior, warrior king, savior king, called Messiah, or Christ in Greek, of the Jewish people. And so he became known amongst his followers, not just as, hey, Jesus, but Jesus Christ, the anointed one. In a way you could say it like Jesus the King, King Jesus in a manner of speaking. Because that's how Jews would talk about the Messiah. The Jews talk, he's King Messiah. When they refer to the Messiah, he's King Messiah. So Jesus was like a king. He was the Messiah in their belief. He fulfilled this belief for them. That's what his followers thought. That's not what everybody thought. And so Jesus met opposition from the religious leaders amongst his people. Not from the Romans. I mean, the Romans might be, if they started hearing like, oh, wait a second, some guy's out there in Galilee claiming he's a king and he's going to set up a kingdom and stuff, I think they might have wanted to check that out. You know what I'm saying? Send a few legions up to Galilee. Keep an eye on this guy, Yeshua, claiming to be Mashiach. But no, they weren't that concerned about Jesus. It was the religious authorities who were concerned about Jesus. He's going to get us all killed. Anyways, we'll discuss later why. And he died. He doesn't run in triumphantly on a horse, sword drawn, and liberate Israel from the Romans and establish a kingdom that will last forever so the Jews can live in peace and govern themselves and not be molested or disturbed by any other group. No, he's tried as a criminal and he's killed. He's executed by the Romans. But if that were only the story, then we wouldn't have a world religion. We might have a religion. We might have something, small. I think we might have a small little cult or religion. By cult, I don't mean anything negative. I just mean like a small religion, a sect. You might have a little sect of people, talking about this guy, Yeshua, this carpenter Jesus, that they really thought was the Messiah, but he's dead and buried, and maybe they have his tomb and they venerate his tomb, but that's about it. But they still believe in him and his teachings. I could, see that happening. But that's not what happens, apparently. The movement, the small movement centered around him explodes, even though he dies a shameless death. He dies as a failure, not as a victorious leader of any group, an executed criminal. Why? Because his followers started to proclaim and tell each other, but also tell others, that they had seen him physically alive again after his death. So now you have to understand what I'm saying here. He truly died. No one was saying this wasn't like a spiritualization, like, God, God, he's in God's presence now. God has him now. Like when someone dies, you say, whoa, she's with God, And that's not what they were saying. That's not what they were claiming. Some of them might have thought it was more like a spiritual experience. Some of the early Christians kind of spiritualized it. But most Christians were like, at least these early Christians were claiming, no, I saw him. Now, what does that mean? Hallucination? Through grief? A mistake? They saw someone who looked like Elvis, they saw someone who looked like Jesus, and they're like, hey, Jesus, you're back. And you can never get a clear picture of Elvis at the Burger King, right? There's always the hand in front of his face, and the film is a little bit grainy. Now, some of these people, what motivated them was that they really believed they had actually, and even touched him. They said, I touched him. It wasn't just like I saw him in a vision, but I touched him physically again. And he was alive after having been dead and buried. And from that comes the largest religious movement that the world has ever seen, Christianity. And you can see this. It's by far over 2 billion. It's by far the largest of all the world's religions. The next is Islam at 1 billion, 1.6 billion, 1,600,000,000. But that's still, 600 million some less. Hinduism, around 1 billion Hindus, but mostly in India. It's mainly, if you take world religions with me, you learn it's mainly a cultural thing. It's to be Indian is to be Hindu. So yeah, of course. And there are a lot of Hindus. There are a lot of Indians in India, over 1 billion people. Most of them are Hindu. So you have about 1 billion Hindus. And after that, it plummets. I think Buddhism is the next with like maybe around 500 million, something like that. And people who say they're Christians, now, of course, practicing is a whole other question, but people who say they're Christians and believe in Jesus Christ make up almost 1/3 of the total global population. So around 33% of the world population of 7 to 8 billion people are believers in this religion. And it's the majority religion, as you can see on this map, of just about every continent. Forget about Antarctica, because almost nobody lives there except scientists. But, North America, South America, okay? And in South America, the really dark blue are places where it's like up to 90% of the population claims Christianity. Europe, claim. Europe is historically Christian, but not really. You see, like Slovakia here is kind of faltering. A lot of atheists in Slovakia. But okay, people claim, again, whether people are practicing, if you read the news articles and stuff like on the religious flyers and stuff like that, yeah, a lot of people claim to be members of the Church of England or claim to be Catholics in France, but churches are empty on Sundays and people don't do much, So, all right, so statistically, Europe, yeah, okay. Australia, yes, Australia, other continent of Australia. And then after that, we've got Asia and Africa. Very few in Asia, although Christianity has actually, well, it starts in Asia. Palestine, Israel is part of the continent of Asia. And Christians have been in Asia parts of Asia for a long, long time, India and China and places like that. But it just never stuck. So Asia, it's around 8% of the population of the continent, this huge continent of Asia, claims to be Christian. You can see where most of them are. Most of them are in like the Philippines, which is the only Asian nation that is majority Christian in Asia. Papua New Guinea, which I lived in for 9 months. That was fun. Papua New Guinea, yes, is majority Christian and even defines itself as a Christian nation in the constitution, but they're part of Oceania, which is a weird thing. It's not a continent. It kind of gets associated in with Australia and the Pacific, okay, not with Asia. But anyways, there it is. It's near Asia. And then Africa. Africa, it's not majority, but it's close to it. About 48% of the continent identifies as Christian, and the rest would be those following Islam, Muslim beliefs, or traditional religions and stuff like that. But 48%, so almost half, and you can see where most of the Christians are, centered in like countries like Zaire, the Congo. Which you did. All right. The Congo, Angola, Western Africa, places where Christians kind of colonized. You say kind of colonized, they did. The French, the British, the Catholics, the Belgians, I should say. French, the British, the Belgians. Up here is where Islam made it. This is all pretty much Islam in these areas. Okay, so you can see where the world, where the focus is for Christianity. Yeah, okay. So I've said this before and I'll say it again about Christianity, and I'll say it a lot throughout this course. It all goes back to that one dude from some podunk, nothing little town in Galilee called Jesus. Jesus of Nazareth. And it's Jesus alone. He's the foundation of Christian faith, So he is the ultimate source of authority for Christians. And I'll talk about this more when I talk about what are our sources of authority for talking about Jesus and stuff like that. Well, ultimately, it goes back to Jesus. I mean, everything that a Christian believes, I know some Christians will, especially with Protestantism, it's the Bible, right? When you want to convert somebody or bring them to Christ, you don't talk about Jesus. You take them into the scriptures, right? You break open the scriptures. Usually they're going to open a Bible for you and give you a Bible verse to read. What do you think that means? Have a Bible study. And then you eventually might give your life to Christ, Okay, that's fine. I'm not against that. I've been saved many times. And yeah, we should give, if you're a Christian, you should be giving your life to Christ. But everything Christians believe, even about the Bible, about God, who and what God is, and our relationship with that God, comes from Jesus. Jesus transforms everything. It's not just Judaism 2.0 with Jesus. Okay, sometimes people try to do that. They try to say, well, Jesus was a Jew, obviously, and he was a Jewish religious teacher, and basically he was just within the stream of Judaism. Okay, fine. But then ask yourself, why did he die? Why did people want him dead and get him killed? Why did he have opposition? Because of as we'll learn, some of the things he was saying about himself, about God. Okay, he was claiming an authority over the scriptures, the sacred writings of Israel, that no one should claim. So he transforms everything for his followers. They're not just, as I said, they're not just kind of like Jews for Jesus, although there are Jews for Jesus. And they were all Jews, basically. All of his followers, as far as we know, were all Jews or mostly Jews. There might have been some non-Jews amongst the crowd. But, don't think they didn't have problems even with Jesus, because he was blowing their minds. Some of the things, he was teaching them things that they had been taught for so long in Judaism. This was how it was. And then Jesus is like, no, this is how I say it is. So he's the source of authority, his example and his teachings, not the Bible, not the temple in Jerusalem or the religious leadership. This carpenter from Nazareth. He is the supreme law for Christians. And so Christians look to him not just for their understanding of the purpose of life, but of reality. What is reality? How do we organize the world in our minds? And as I said, ultimately, the ultimate of ultimates, which is God. We'll talk about God in a later class, but God, God has a son? I remember listening to one of the comedians with Bill Maher. He's an atheist. He's a nice guy. He has a whole bit about, how silly Christianity is. He's like, yeah, God has a son, Well, God could have a son. It's not theoretically impossible. Depends on how you define God, right? Yeah. A lot of the ancient religions, the male and female gods, and they were married and they did their thing and created baby gods. Not outside the realm of possibilities, not unheard of, right? Heidi, right? Heidi, don't tell me, I got it. Kind of got it. Stoklosa. Yeah. But no, not for the Jews. There's one God only. There is no other. He's perfect. He doesn't have children. And here comes this carpenter. Says, yeah, he's my dad. He's my father. Yeah, but what about Joseph? Isn't there, to Jesus, isn't there this guy Joseph? No. God is my father. Oh, okay. What do you think if you're a first century Jew and you haven't been taught that your whole life? All right, I'll stop here. I'll see you on Thursday. God bless you all. Okay, yeah, so I'll do that. And do this. And then I think that I will not do this. Cut this out. All right. All righty. Turn this off.
Yeah.